Okay, I'm in 2 Samuel. Like 2 Samuel's a good book. All of the Bible is a good book, but you got a lot of stuff going on in 2 Samuel. So now David hears about the death of Saul. The man runs to him and tells him, I'm from the Amalekites. And he witnessed Saul falling on a spear, and he said that Saul called him and told him to finish slaying him, so he slayed him and took his crown and his bracelet. And then David was angry with him, so he called one of his men, and he fell upon him and killed the guy, and told him, "Thy blood be upon thine head, for your mouth testifies against thee, saying, You've slain the Lord's anointed." So David lamented with lamentations over Saul and over Jonathan his son. And they wept for him. So now David is king over Judah. They anointed David the king over Judah. And he went up to Judah with his wives and everything. He asked the Lord, and the Lord told him yes. So then the men of Judah came and anointed him king over them. And then they blessed the people that did go recover Saul's body and buried it. But Abner, the son of Ner, the captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and made him king over Gilead, and over Benjamin and Ephraim and all Israel. So now Israel has two kings. You've got David, that's king of Judah, and you got Ishbosheth, which is the king over the rest of Israel, the tribes surrounding Judah. And Abner, the servant of Ishbosheth, met Joab, the servant of David, and they met together by the pool. And they sat there and they said, "Let the young men now rise and play before us." Which they would fight. They would get together and they would fight each other, and they killed each other. And it was a very sore battle that day, and Abner was beaten, and the men of Israel, before the servants of David. And there were 3 sons of Zeruiah, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. And Asahel was light as a foot, on foot as a wild roe, and he pursued after Abner. So then Abner killed him, and Joab and Abishai pursued after Abner until the sun went down, and they were come to the hill of Ammah. So the children of Benjamin gathered together after Abner, and became one troop, and stood at the top of the hill. So they kind of stopped warring with each other that day. Joab blew the trumpet, and all the people stood still and pursued after Israel no more, neither fought they any more. So Joab returned from following Abner and told the king. Let's see. Oh, they took up Asahel and buried him, and they went back. Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. And then David had kids. He had 6 wives. He married the princesses of other nations also, which was forbade by the law. But he did that to forge alliances with other people. So he goes through and talks about his sons and everything, how many he had. And Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, which she died. And Abner went to her and laid with her. And then Ishbosheth asked him, "Why'd you go to my father's concubine?" And then he was wroth, so they had their words. And Ishbosheth was afraid of Abner. So then Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf. I guess trying to make a league with him. And then David told him, "Well, I want my wife, Michal, Saul's daughter." And so he got his wife. And then she was with someone else, and he followed him crying. And then they told him to turn back. So he returned. So David got his wife back. And he's trying to make a league or whatever. But then Joab snuck around and pursued after him and killed him. So Joab got his revenge for his brother. And then basically David said, "I'm guiltless. I didn't know nothing about this. Let it rest on the head of Joab." Because he killed Abner, which killed his brother. And he made him mourn for Abner for killing him. He made him rent his clothes and gird him with sackcloth, and made him they buried Abner and made him grieve for him and weep for him. Because Abner, he was a tough dude, which Joab, he's a bad dude too. So Saul's son heard Abner was dead in Hebron, and his hands were feeble, and all the Israelites were troubled. And he had captains, which is Bana and Rechab, and they turned on him and killed him, the king. And then they brought the king's head to David, and then David had their hands and feet cut off and had them hung for killing the king. So now David they do the thing, and then he's the king of all of Israel now. He's not just king over Judah, he's king over everyone. And then he finds he took more concubines, had more kids. He fought against the Philistines again. Destroyed them. Then they called for the ark to be in Jerusalem, because once the ark was brought back by the Philistines, it was in the house of Abinadab. So they brought it down, and then the oxen moved real fast and it shook it, and then Uzzah grabbed his hand and touched it, and he died. And David was displeased, so he took it to someone. He made it go to someone else's house, Obed-Edom, and it stayed there for 3 months, and he was prosperous, and the Lord blessed his household. And David heard about it, so then he got the ark brought to Jerusalem, where he was at. And when he was bringing it, he danced before the Lord with all his might, and was girded with the linen ephod, and he made offerings, and brought the ark with shouting and with the sound of a trumpet. And Saul's daughter looked and saw him dancing and leaping before the ark. She despised him in her heart. So with all that being said, he went, and she was talking junk to him, and then the Lord closed her womb up. She didn't have any kids until her death. So she never had kids. So now David had to rest around from his enemies. And then David wants to build a house for the ark, to build a temple. But it was not done in his time, for God wanted his son Solomon to build the temple for his ark. So he was just talking about, wanting to build an ark, and then he said that he'll set up a seed after him, and he shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I'll be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I'll chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men, but my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. His kingdom and throne shall be established forever. Now Solomon is the king after David, but his throne shall be established forever. So after them you got kings raising up, kings falling, kings raising up, kings falling, but the final king will be Christ, and he will be at the throne of David. He'll rule from the throne of David. So then David gives praise to God and talks about the Lord, and and just praising him and thanking him for him going to do that for David, which you should read that. So then he conquests and then fights more people and subdues them. He shows kindness to Mephibosheth. Basically, Jonathan had a son who was lame on his feet. He came to David and fell on his face, and David told him to fear not, and he let him eat at his table. He stayed in the palace and ate at David's table and didn't go without food, because David's covenant with Jonathan. Then he defeats Ammon. So what happened was the king of Ammon died, and the son reigned in his stead. So David wanted to show kindness, so he sent his servants there, and then they shaved half their beards off and cut off their garments in the middle, even to their buttocks, and sent them away. So they sent them away in shame. So when he heard it, he basically told them to stay in Jericho till their beards be grown, and then return. And then they went and they took out Ammon. So then, after a year expired, they was still going to war and stuff, but he stayed home in Jerusalem and went to his roof, and he saw a beautiful woman taking a bath, and he inquired of the woman and wanted her. Her name was Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. So he took her, he laid with her, for she was purified from her uncleanness, and she returned to her house. And she conceived and told David, and said, I'm with child. So he wanted Uriah killed. So then they sent him to war and put him in the forefront and planned it out where he died in war. So then he could take Bathsheba to be his wife and basically fake it out and stuff, like he didn't do anything wrong. And then Nathan told David, he came to him and said, basically using an example of a rich man having a lot of flocks and herds and a poor man having but one little lamb. And then a traveler came by and the rich man took the poor man's lamb instead of using one of his. And David was angry and was wanting to kill the man and said he should restore the lamb fourfold. And then Nathan told him that you're the one that did that. You took that man's wife and had him killed. So David had sinned, and the sword was against him. The Lord's sword was against him now. Nathan told him, the Lord have put away your sin, and you shall not die. And basically, Bathsheba had a miscarriage. So she had, the baby was born, but then it died like 7 days later, because he was mourning the child while it was alive and it was dead. He just went to normal. So now he's got a son named Absalom, and he had a fair sister whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. He was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her, but he had a friend whose name was Jonadab, and he's a very subtle man, sneaky, had ideas. So he told Amnon, he says, why don't you just play like you're sick and let her feed you? So he went into it, and he acted like he was sick. The king came to see him, and he told him, let my sister Tamar feed me. Make a couple cakes myself that I may eat at her hand. So she did. So she was cooking everything before him, and he took a hold of her. He told her, "Come lie with me, my sister." And she told him, "Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not this folly. And now whither shall I cause my shame to go?" So he went and listened to her, and he raped her. And then after that, he hated her exceedingly. Wherewith he hated her with his hate toward her was greater than the love he had toward her. And he told her to go away. And she said to him, "There's no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other which you did to me." But he would not hearken to her. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for such robe were kings' daughters that were virgins apparelled. And so she put ashes on her head and rent her garments, and laid her hand on her head, and went out crying. And Absalom saw her, and he knew what happened. And when David heard the things, he was very wroth. But Absalom didn't say nothing to Amnon. He hated him because he'd forced his sister Tamar. You think about that. He saw her and he wanted her, and he lusted after her. And look what happened. He raped her. So Absalom basically went a year. He didn't say nothing to him, no good or no bad. And then he had a feast, and he got his revenge, and he killed Amnon. And then they ran and thought all of David's sons died. It was only Amnon that died. So Absalom had his revenge. So you think about that. When you do someone dirty like that, I mean, just anybody dirty, period, people's going to get revenge on you, whether it be God or somebody else. I mean, that's just a scary thing. Because, I mean, he saw her, he wanted her, he raped her. Just because someone looks good, you can't. I mean, you got to determine the difference between lust and love. Because after he got with her, he hated her. So then Absalom fled. And then he came back. The king missed him and stuff. And then after that, he revolts. He tries to get people in his name because he wants to be king. He wants to rip the kingdom from David. So he was basically politicking. The people was locking him, and they was watching him and growing to him. So then they hear and he's going after David, and David has to be in exile and leave the kingdom and stuff and hide. So then Absalom rules in Jerusalem, and he's raising up. So then there's basically more civil war. I mean, he wanted to kill David. He wanted to kill his father. So then it turns on down that David was doing a war, basically going to war, but David didn't want his son killed. And then Absalom met with him, and he was riding, his head got caught, and he got hung in an oak tree, and then Joab smote him with arrows to his heart that he died. He didn't want nobody to know that he killed him. So then David mourns for him. He mourns for his son Absalom. And then so then people was coming and mourning with him and stuff, and then talking to him, and all that, and basically he's the king over everybody now still. There's some of them some men that was revolting against him out of Benjamin and stuff, and then basically the people went after him and killed them, and then they was basically one kingdom. So now there's a famine in the land for 3 years. And David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, it is for Saul and his bloody house, because he slew the